Welcome to the Success and Happiness podcast. I got Mike Pagan with me today, and Mike's done a lot of work in the mental health and mental wealth arena. So that's why I wanted to have a chat to him and get an idea of what he can offer us, some tips and tricks and that sort of thing. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Always good to be looking at you and a antelope's bottom over behind you. It's quite disconcerting.
That's my favorite okapi. I wanted to change it, but everyone seems to like it, so I have to keep it.
They are beautiful beasts.
Yeah, very. So not sure where we can start, but I mean, obviously you've been in that arena for quite a bit, and you've just written a book on probably about a year ago, maybe now, on mental wealth. So you call it mental wealth as opposed to mental health. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it does need a bit of an explanation. In short, mental health a lot of the time gets negative connotations set up with it because it flirts with depression, suicide, anxiety, and everything else, and sort of having poor mental health. By converse, mental wealth for me is very much focused on having the support network around you that's fit for purpose for the way forward, and manages challenges like isolation. So when we have good people around us, we make braver decisions, we can have more fun, and it doesn't stop things going wrong. So life will still go wrong from time, but we bounce back more effectively.
Yeah.
And so my whole focus here is building that support network around people, individuals, and in companies as well, so that they are able to make those strong decisions with good people around them that they know have truly got their back. And I help people establish who has and who hasn't, rather than being sort of mental health, which is very much focused on those core areas, which can be harder to swallow. But nowadays, with the mental health first aid in businesses and everything else, there's so much awareness now of mental health, which is brilliant and absolutely necessary. We now need to know, okay, well, what can we do that's applied to help cover that and build on that, so that we deal with challenges that come along, isolation being one of the main ones that I believe in.
So I saw a post on LinkedIn yesterday, and people are putting a lot of onus on companies to now have mental health programs and that sort of thing in place. But I feel that that's very much a box ticking exercise. And I think the effect of it, the actual effectiveness of it, is going to be very weak, because companies do this all the time. And again, this is more for big companies rather than for small companies, because small companies can't really afford to do that, but big companies can. Well, big companies sort of have to do that. They have to tick that box. And I feel that there's something a lot better we can do outside of the company side, and very much about what you talk about, having that support network of people around you.
But it's just to approach that first element there. In business, it's irrelevant whether it's a large company or not. And the mental health and well-being are two parts of the same element.
Yeah.
Obviously, one gets more publicity for sad reasons than the other. But in the world of well-being, a client of mine has, in the last year, had two members of staff, both female, going down with female-related cancer. Both ladies under the age of 40. One sadly hasn't made it. The other one is in full recovery. Now, you talk about well-being. This is a small organization. It's not sort of thousands of people. It's less than 30 people. And within that company, the effects of that going on within the company, plus the two individuals involved during their respective journeys and their families, it's huge. And the organization was really proactive with the well-being and working with that. You get that right, you retain staff, you gain staff, and your productivity goes up, because people know that the company have got you supported. And this is an area where I believe going forward that the millennials and the Generation Z are not going to want to work for companies that give platitude responses to what is mental well-being and mental health. It's about, do you care? Do you give a proverbial? Yeah, that's what's and that's demonstrated by actions, not by platitudes.
Yeah. So is that sort of something that you're putting into companies, that you're helping companies build up?
Yeah, definitely. Because when that is put in place, it works. It's I refer to it as a human social responsibility. All the big companies get excited about CSR, corporate social responsibility, but it's the human social responsibility that makes us different from others, that makes us work. And it's the mental health first aid training is brilliant, and it gets people set up, but it doesn't get people set up as counselors, as coaches, as support. It gets people set up to put a plaster on, to put a band-aid on.
Yeah, exactly.
And then hand it over to somebody who knows properly. And if the company gets it wrong, then they choose two people who stick their hand up and say, yeah, I'll do that one. But they're the gossips who want to know everything that's going on. So they're not actually the person in the company that anybody wants to talk to. I'm not going to tell them I missed the bus, let alone that I missed my period, I missed my life cycle, I missed my whatever else it happens to be. It's just not going to work. So it has to be proactive. It can't be platitudes, and people have to truly believe in what's going on there.
Do you think that's happening? Do you think that they're actually, they're actually feeling that the company really cares?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Simple as that. The companies that are doing it really well are doing it really well. There are companies who are giving it lip service, and there's companies who've got their heads stuck in the ground thinking, oh, what's this COVID? Oh.
So what size companies are, is it quite a variety, different size of companies, or is it?
Yes, it will vary, because the solopreneur that's now got 5 staff, that's now got 10 staff.
Yeah.
They're evolving. We've got to have contracts, and our staff have got to have HR policies, and we can't just hire and fire, versus the 5,000 employees in various silos around the planet, and sort of we're looking. It's an area where for far too long it's been treated as intangible, fluffy, so we can avoid it.
Yeah,
because we can't measure it, so we'll ignore it. And the issue is when we look at the severe statistics on a global basis. This is not just UK, it's not just America, it's not just on a global basis of the suicide stats across men and women it's out of control in certain parts. But if we are asking better questions, creating an environment when people feel supported and nurtured and comfortable to have those conversations, then we are less likely to have those challenges across the board.
Yeah.
There's no clean fix, but what we've got to do is we've got to be proactive to set the environment where people can be looked after. And each one of us, as you know, as I know, will have ups and downs. Therein lies the reality. Just because today was a good day doesn't mean tomorrow will be as well, and vice versa on the negative side.
Yeah, exactly. You touched briefly on saying, like, there's people in the company and you're not necessarily going to tell them that you missed the bus or that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of where I'm going in terms of, they can have things in place, but if it's not a safe place, if you don't feel safe to be able to be, not even be yourself, but to be able to open up, then you're not really going to be able to talk to or feel comfortable enough talking to somebody.
Yeah. And for me, when I start working with individuals and companies, I will get them to do a non-scientific, totally subjective assessment of the people in their inner sanctum, in their network, and just grade them.
Yeah.
And it's just, for people listening now, please go ahead and just make a list of names of people that are in your close network, and score them 1 to 10, 1 being a low score, 10 being a high score, as to how committed to you are they. And I say it's totally subjective, because as soon as we try and put some academia behind it, whatever else, and we overthink it. No, I just want your gut feel. You're not going to. Colin is never going to know he's a 7 in my book, or a 6 in my book, or an 11. This is purely for you. He could be a -2, but the rating is 1 to 10, so that would be cruel. But it's just putting those numbers in subjectively. Then if I explain what those numbers mean, if you've scored somebody a 1, 2, or a 3, they're an acquaintance. They know you. Period. They're not committed to you or you to them. They're just an acquaintance. You met them at something, a networking event, whatever it was. You know them. If you've got people scoring 4s and 5s, you know them for a reason. Yeah, so that there's some sort of process. They could be to do with the sport you're involved in, the school gate, your parents' hospital, whatever it happens to be. There's a reason why you know them. Yeah. However, if you don't turn up for 2 months, they're not going to ring. They're not going to reach out. You meet up with them 2 months later and say, "Oh, hi, Mike. Where have you been?" "I broke my leg." "Oh." Yeah. We know straight away people. Then you've got your 6s and 7s. Now, your 6s and 7s are people that can be your best mates. You can have known for donkey's years. You go to birthdays together, weddings, bar mitzvahs, christenings, whatever it happens to be. However, you're not comfortable being open, honest, vulnerable, and naked with them about your career path, your opportunities, your finances, your family, your inner core vulnerability. Those are relied for your 8, 9s, and 10s. And when it comes to scoring your mental wealth team, as I call it, it's only the 8, 9s, and 10s that count. So it's not a question of delete everybody else. That's not what I'm saying here. It's just putting your energy, effort, and focus on the 8, 9s, and 10s, because they're the ones who, when you have got a challenge, a situation, an opportunity, are going to ask the better questions. They're the ones who are going to hold you accountable for the things you say you're going to do, and they're the ones who you respect their opinions and will act upon them.
Yeah, because they've known you for a long time, so they kind of have more an idea of who you are. And
it's not always they've known you for a long time. They just get you and you get them.
Yeah,
and their insights are bang on, and you're happy to be vulnerable there because you also trust them. It's not that they're going to say, "Oh, did you hear what so and said?" It's none of that. So that takes time to build up, but it doesn't mean you just because you've known them for 10 years that they need to be an 8, 9, or a 10. Because couple of my great friends, they're definitely 7s at the highest score, but I've been at their weddings and vice versa, and all this list of other things we've done for years. However, I'm not going to have that chat with them because it just doesn't sit.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot of people kind of say to you when you give them that task that they don't actually have a lot of people in that they can put in that 7, 8, 9, 10 bracket?
Yes. And that is the good reality, albeit slightly scary.
Yeah.
Because when somebody turned around, I had a lady, she's ex-military, came out at quite a serious rank within the military in the RAF. And she's now works in the coaching and speaking world today. And she just said, "I've had a total epiphany listening to what you're describing there, because I have 0 in my 8, 9s, and 10s. She spends her whole life giving, nurturing, helping, supporting, doing everything that's meant to be professionally. But she spends no time on looking after herself, getting the right people in her network and her support crew. And she felt totally vulnerable as far as nobody's truly got my back."
Yeah.
To which the response was, "Okay, good. That's a sad day for you today with that realization. However, the flip side of it is now what do we do?" And then we went into the tactics of how to recruit and to intentionally recruit the right people. But it's that process. We need to know today where we are, so in 3 months' time we can do this process again and see, have we improved, have we changed? There were certain people who I always thought must be 8, 9s, and 10s, but actually I realized are not. Yeah. And it's now on my radar, so I'm assessing, are they actually the right person or are they just noise? And again, it's not being disrespectful, it's just reality.
Yeah.
Because when we know who's truly got our back, we have so much more fun.
Yeah.
My late mother-in-law always said, And this is to do with best friends, so not the mental wealth team, but it's still. But if you can count your best friends on more than one hand, you're kidding yourself.
That's really important, actually. I think for people to know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the reality of we're talking seriously about quality, not quantity, quality.
Yeah.
And we get that right, and the people play, and it works. Because guess what? They are there for you.
Yeah. It's unusual because I think in general, women tend to talk a lot more. Obviously, being in the military is probably slightly different because that background, tends to be a bit more of an institution, and you're not sort of going out with, you're not having meeting your mates for coffee and that sort of thing as much. Whereas in the non-military world, women tend to talk to each other a lot more than men do, and on that level.
True. However, male or female, are we happy, comfortable being vulnerable, open, and honest? And because if we're saying that ladies are more likely to chat, are they more likely?
Do you find that ladies are more likely to be that, or do you find that it's equal?
I've not done any research to say whether men or women are more likely to have a 0 in their mental wealth team when we first start talking. I just treat everyone as an individual. At some point, I probably could or should do some analysis around that. The focus at the moment is, for me, it's just the realization of, okay, I'm scoring 2. I've got 2 8s and a 9. Oh, all right, so that means I'm scoring 35 or 25, whatever it is. 25. Get my maths right. That's the score, but that's a starting score. When we have a fully functioning, well-worked mental wealth team, as I recall it, we can have 8 to 15 people in that team, in that network, who truly have our back and support us. And that's the important process, is building up more people that we can rely on for different situations, different circumstances. They're not all relevant or viable all of the time, but we can build up those numbers.
It's kind of needing or having that person to speak to, when you're in a kind of a bad place or something happens, your relationship might break down or someone who's close to you might die. And it's having that someone that you can call. And I guess that's why you have that, because not everybody's going to take your call at any time. So having more people in your network just gives that a little bit wider berth of actually getting in touch with someone.
Well, it's one of the light bulb moments, however you want to call it. When I was writing the book on mental wealth, I lost a friend to suicide. He was going through a very ugly divorce, estranged from his son, and COVID as well. And he basically, intelligent male, knew what he was doing, and took his way out. He did have a support network around him, who, unfortunately for them, they found him. But the reality around that was the right people at the right time, asking the right question of the right person in the right tone. It's how the coins fall, or how the dominoes drop over. Not everybody, sadly, can be saved. But the reality is, when we proactively and intentionally get people around us, and we're being open and honest with them, it is frightening in that world. The monsters in the head are so much louder than the reality of what is going on. And I know your story. You talk publicly about your personal journey here, but that monster or monsters, and it's sort of the reality of finding the right people who just know you and are asking and supporting. I'm not a trained counsellor. I'm not a mental health counsellor. I bring in people in to work in that situation when they arise, when I'm working with clients, and be that one-to-one or with companies. I don't do that because it's not an area, A, that I'm an expert in, or B, that I could be an expert in, because I don't have thick enough skin. I absorb. You need to have an element of non-stick Teflon coating to be able to work in that world. And I have total respect for people that do. But the flip side, though, then is finding, okay, who can we plug in? What's the situation? who's asking the right questions at the right time in the right place.
When you're plugging those people in or creating those networks for people, are you giving them any sort of training on about how to ask the right questions and that sort of thing, or are they just those people which are there?
It's the people that we are intentionally recruiting. If they are asking better questions of us, then we're making better decisions going forward.
Yeah.
Right. So I hone in sort of 4 core areas. I talk about self-care, coaching, professional network, and then the mastermind, the peer support groups. And when we get a combination of those areas all working together, we recruit more people. So in the self-care area, this is about making ourselves number one. And I joke about it that I've always historically been number 6 in my house. And I know you picked up on this yourself.
Yeah.
That's a wife, 3 children, and a dog. And if you this time last year it was number 14. It was a wife, 3 children, a dog, and lots of puppies. But it's that whole when I'm not number one, then somebody has a challenge or a situation in my family or in my close network. If I'm not fit for purpose because I'm broken, I'm overtired, I'm spent, I'm whatever it is, then I can't help.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I have to put myself out there as Superman or Superwoman to be able to support others, but by proactively looking after my self-care through nutrition, through health and fitness, through learning about meditation and mindfulness and other areas, and bringing in professionals that can help me learn that even more. Because there's only so much I can read in a book or watch on a YouTube video. There are times when we're developing ourselves, we have to spend money. And that gives us greater support and input that enables us to step up and, back to that point, achieve more as individuals. Again, I mean, I know you put my fitness career to shame, but that's only because you're a lot longer, a lot leaner, and a lot faster. But for me, I've always struggled with meditation and mindfulness, in so much that I either get up and walk away or I fall asleep. But then I worked out with I do a lot of open water swimming. So with my swimming, that doing stroke after stroke after stroke became a meditative process for me. And the amount of sort of curveballs and, to quote a friend of mine, cosmic faxes that would just come into my head whilst I was swimming. And every time I get out the water, I have never gotten out the water feeling worse than I did when I got in.
No, never. I mean, that's a lot with exercise. It's just there's endorphins and everything else. But yeah, it just gives you that time, especially swimming, because you can't really talk to anyone else. I mean, I suppose you can if you're swimming breaststroke or something with someone else, then that's great. But
that would imply that I could swim breaststroke. It's not pretty.
But yeah, if you're just sort of swimming away in your own will, then yeah, you're not really, you're just in your own will and you just enjoying
and that. But if you're doing that through whatever weirdness works for you, and I intentionally use the word weirdness because people, I can't do that because that's a bit. No, if it's something you love and you enjoy it, be that swimming, be that walking mountains, riding bikes, crocheting, knitting, doing the gardening, cutting the lawn with a pair of scissors, whatever it is that works for you, that allows you to just tune out, that isn't digital. Yes, that isn't sat in front of a screen, big screen, little screen, whatever it happens to be, where you are able to just let your brain just flow, switch off, do its own thing. That is part of the mindfulness meditation. And if anybody's ever had a first lesson in that area, they always say, this is not about switching off the noise. This is about focusing on one area so the noise becomes quieter.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of work I've been on a course the last couple of weeks, and that whole noise thing, it's kind of the wrong thing to say. It takes a lot of effort to quieten the noise down because it's, but it does.
It does if you're focusing on the noise.
Yeah.
But if you're focusing on something else, then the noise automatically reduces.
Yeah. But that's
it's not 100% either. It's there's no perfect meditation or mindfulness. That happens. Okay, so now we bring yourself back in. Okay.
Yeah. Um, so the whole, are you still swimming now? Are you still doing the cold water swimming?
I do a bit because of living in the middle of England. Some of the lakes I don't enjoy. Sorry, the rivers and whatever else
Yeah.
I don't enjoy during the winter. And the lakes, because I like to swim a bit, quite a long way. I feel a waste of time just to driving. So if I go to the seaside, so this picture behind was down at Sandbanks last weekend in Bournemouth. And I went down there for a day with my wife, just the two of us escaping from the world, and we just sat and yeah, I got in, and it was a balmy 14 degrees.
Oh, so quite toasty still.
So it was quite toasty for this time of year. So if I was next to the sea, I'd be in far more regularly.
Yeah.
But it's knowing where you are and what's going on. I can't claim to be a full winter swimmer. Although I do, when I'm near it, I will always get in.
Yeah.
Then okay, you pink all over, you're shivering like a good one, but your brain is firing.
Yeah, and I think that's what's changed for me recently is that in the past I've always been about, okay, I want to swim as long as I can in the cold, so therefore I'm putting on the wetsuit and the gloves and everything else. And what's changed for me this winter is that it's just about enjoying it. It's not about swimming as long as I can and as fast as I can, everything else. It's just about getting in, still in my costume. I think it's 11 degrees currently. And just really just enjoying it, doing it with some mates and just enjoying the experience and enjoying or benefiting from that cold water, but not trying. I find it actually quite good, not pushing myself, because I'd be swimming for like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, which even in a wetsuit's a long time in that cold. And it takes a lot. It really saps, personally, it saps a lot of my energy. So going in for a lot less time, probably just under 20 minutes at the moment. You enjoy it. You're not pushing yourself.
Just to highlight, and I'm only saying this because I'm being Captain Sensible here. They do say it's 1 minute per degree if you're not acclimatized.
Yeah.
So an 11 degree water would mean maximum 11 minutes for somebody who's not acclimatized. You're used to the water, so you can go longer.
Yeah. No,
but for other people, think, whoa, 20 minutes. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
But normal people, 20 minutes not going to happen.
No.
I'm just saying that because it's one of those areas. Because I 14 degrees, I was thinking, yeah, I'm not going to be in for 14 minutes. I was hoping to be, but I wasn't.
Yeah, I find it almost crazy. Like a lot of people, they come down and, over the last few weeks, they're like, yeah, we're just starting swimming now. And you're like, you're starting swimming and it's, 12, 13 degrees. It's like, that's not when you should be starting swimming,
But if they can, then they fall in love with it through the cold.
Yeah.
Then come the summertime, when it's just rocking up in a pair of shorts and away you go, jumping in and driving home, and you're already dry. That kind of works.
But that whole acclimatization is massive. That really makes all the difference in the world. Like we're swimming every week, and we know from the past that if you miss a week, it hurts twice as much the next time you go in. So you got to keep it going.
When we swam the channel and I did a relay, not a solo, so I'm mad, not stupid, or stupid, not mad, can't remember which. But that whole acclimatization, you have to do a 2-hour swim in budgie smugglers in sub 15 degrees. And so that to get acclimatized and used to that, you potentially, the time is longer than you're swimming at the moment, but it's that knowledge of the cold and how that works. Because when you're in that colder water, if you're not used to it, then it can do all sorts of things to organs and hypothermia and brain and everything else. I mean, the head down swimming, having the ice cream head, you think you're about to have a stroke or something like that, and then after a few minutes, it goes away. But at the time, it's intense.
It's just the most. Those few minutes when you start are just the worst in the whole world. They really are. But after that, it's the best.
Yeah, therein lies that problem. It's that first 7 minutes. We're just getting over threshold.
How
Anyway,
do
we
you fi-
digress because I'm sure your listeners and watchers are thinking, who are these two old men talking about splashing around the water the whole time?
Well, the one thing I love,
self-care, it works. Find
yeah,
your way of self-care,
exactly.
whatever, however weird it is, do it. And if you need help learning how to do it properly, don't be afraid to get support in to work with you.
I think there's a lot of, especially, I mean, maybe that's changing slightly now, but for people to actually take that next step and get a professional involved is a really big step, I find, for people. I think, even you mentioned about being number 6 in the family and that sort of thing. And I think that, families tend to see, I say the man, I know that's all changing now, but they'll see that person as the main, as their Superman, as you said, and that's what they expect from you. And you're the rock and you're always there. You might be number 6, but you're the one holding them all up. And they always expect you to be the strong, solid one. And I think if something happens to you, then that's what really throws everybody, because they're like, well, he was always so strong and fit and healthy, and now suddenly, and he was our rock, and now suddenly it's gone. But families, I don't think they give them the tools to continue to be strong, like give them their time to go exercising or give them their time to do whatever they need to do to maintain their own mental health.
It's one of the words that is used a lot nowadays, which is resilience.
Yeah.
We all need to be resilient, whether you are a father of 3, a mother of 2, a 19-year-old, a 90-year-old. And it's learning those elements of where you have control and you take ownership and responsibility. And I know that sounds heavy, but I've got young adult children, and there are times where that wonderful cause and effect conversation that goes on. But throughout our lives, we know full well if we drink too much, we will be less productive the following day. If we eat, and if we do that, this happens. If we don't do that, then this will happen. And it's learning about our bodies, it's learning about our minds, and it's knowing what helps us and what hinders us. It's like the good old mood hoover, the negative personality types that I've always talked about. And it's knowing when the phone rings, and I'm not suggesting change the ringtone for the negative people, but sometimes it works. It's quite funny. But then you look down and you see who it is, and you know full well that in 5 minutes time or 15 minutes time, at the end of this conversation that I have with this person, I will feel worse than I do now. And it's okay. We've got to manage that, and that's and whether that be we just knock the swipe left, get rid of the call, bring them back when we're in a state of mind that we are ready to deal with that person. And it's managing them, because when we're looking after ourselves, we want to be around people that enthuse, motivate, inspire, demonstrate, excite, and all of those words. And if we're doing the flip side of that with mood hoovers, drains, negs, energy vampires, all the other phrases that are out there, then clearly that's going to rub off on us, no matter how Teflon your skin is.
Yeah.
And if those people are colleagues or family members, then we need to manage that more effectively. And in the work one, I always, when people ask me, so, yeah, okay, my boss is my colleague is whatever it is, and I will always just come out with that thing. So just tell them you've been on a seminar with some bloke, and he was talking about mood hoovers, and during that process, he said that he is a negative person at times. And what you do then is you explain what the whole process is, who the effects and everything else. And then you give that person permission to call you out when you are being negative. Yeah. And when they turn around and say, yeah, I'm sure I can do that, because they think, yeah, blimey, I thought I was the one. And then the final line is, and turn around and say, once they've said yes, that they'll do that. And if it's okay with you, do I have your permission to point out if you do the same?
And then there's just silence.
And they go, I can't see why not. But what you've done there is two things. One is you've got their permission to raise the awareness. And the second is you've put the language of the mood hoover on their radar. And they'll start looking at other people now for that going on, which means they'll become more aware of themselves.
Now, yeah, because it's about awareness.
But it's the awareness.
Yeah. And you're helping them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Massively.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I saw something probably a couple of months ago now about emails. You know, people expect you send an email and people expect you to reply in the same sort of millisecond immediately. And someone I saw, they put on, they had a reply saying, you know, I've received your email. I can't try to think of the right words, but it was something about, you know, I'm not in the right mental state to respond to you right now. And I'll get back to you tomorrow or something like that. And yeah, it's something that when someone says that, you can kind of go, well, I don't know if they're serious or joking, but you can't really take that risk and go, are you joking? Because they could be serious. So you kind of, but yeah, it just sort of buys you that time and
it's doing stuff that's fit for the individual that works for them. And if it's challenging like that, but it's taking back control.
Yes, exactly.
You get the email autoresponders, but that so many people don't use email because they're doing it all through WhatsApp, and they can see when you've been breathing. They've got you on Snap Maps. They've got you on Instagram. They know you. They've been through your bins this morning. They know everything about you, and it's just being aware of, okay, we've got to manage it the right way for us.
Yeah,
that's the key part. And if you've got a coach or you've got somebody of that ilk, they are the ones who point out your self-sabotage tactics. They're the ones who get to know you, and they can turn around and say, you're doing that thing again.
Yeah.
And that changes it. But it's because you've given people one-to-one permission to really go for you.
Yeah. Just going back slightly again, when we spoke about swimming, do you find that whole being in nature really helps you a lot?
Yeah, I'm a townie.
Yeah.
So I admit to that. I'm not a city dweller. I lived in London periodically, and I've lived overseas in Western Australia and other places like that. And I do like space. But where I live in the centre of a town, I see lots of other people's bricks and windows. So I don't. There was a beautiful sunrise this morning that I could just about see, but I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Even though I was up at a time when I would have or could have. So it's the therapy, for want of a better phrase, of just breathing fresh air and getting out of there is great. And whether that be taking a dog out, borrowing a dog. I mean, the number of people who have dogs that can't always walk them or can't always do right by the dog. I'll walk your dog.com should be a website. I don't know whether there is such a thing, but just putting it out there, I'll happily do it. Just the space, the fresh air, the breath, and back to I think on the day we're recording this happens to be Billy Connolly's birthday, and one of his lines about Scottish weather is, "It's never bad weather, it's just inappropriate clothing." That quote has been given to thousands of people around the planet, but there's the reality. If you've got the right clothing on, it doesn't matter if it's raining.
Yeah, this is pretty true. Yeah. And the dog could do a coat as well if he's up for it.
If they're small enough and and they need a coat, I prefer dogs that are big enough and they've got biceps bigger than mine. But
nice big dog. Yeah, the other thing I think which sort of breaks my heart a little bit is watching people walking the dog and they're just on their phone the whole time, and they sort of gone out. It's almost like gone out for a nice dog walk with the dog in nature, and then just completely sabotage it by just basically not even being present and just being on the phone the whole time.
I confess to doing that at times because I've got an office in the garden, and when I'm in solitary space, I will go for a walk with a book, listening to a book, or I'm on the phone making a few calls and things like that. But then at other times, I intentionally, the headphones don't even come out in the pocket with me so that I can be truly absorbing and enjoying it. An example, back to swimming briefly, I will wear waterproof headphones in a swimming pool because my wife gave them to me. And it's quite good because I know the number of lengths I can do against the average track, which therefore means I don't have to count lengths. I just have to count the number of songs I listen to. And then suddenly the remix comes on and I've done 25 lengths and it's still going. But that works. But I will never wear those headphones in nature.
In open water, yeah.
Yeah, because I want to hear. I want to be. I want to know what's going on around me.
Yeah. When we speak about that sort of close support group, how's your relationship like with your wife evolved over the years?
Well, it constantly evolves. I can't remember how long you've been married, but I broke through the 25 years a couple of years ago, and I remember when my parents went through that, and they were really old. And now I'm thinking I've got kids who are sort of my eldest is coming up 25 now, and you're thinking okay, but it's that evolution of the relationship of sort of from our courting days with no responsibilities, dual income, no kids. What was it? Dinkies. All of those through to 3 kids, schools, uniforms, sports. So now I've got weekends where I can do what I like. My youngest is heading to Australia shortly with a job, and my eldest is in New Zealand, and my middle one's still at uni in Oxford. You say, okay, this is proper empty nesting. And so our relationship is evolving hugely at the moment. And we don't really know where it's heading.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's heading in that sort of direction. It's just we don't know how it's working because digital nomadism is becoming the norm. So my work, we could be living in Vancouver for 2 months, doing all the work, slightly inconvenient time zones on occasions, but manageable.
Yeah.
So all of these elements are ahead of us, and it's very exciting about where it's going to go. And the two of us still get on. We don't talk to each other via solicitors. We can sort of share the same room and share
or via the kids.
Yeah, exactly. So that works, and it's part of it's back to the whole element of this support network. You transition, whether you're transitioning from a primary school to senior school, when you're transitioning out of senior school onto university or a year out or an apprenticeship program, you're transitioning into your first property rented, your first property bought, moving in with a partner. And so these are all transitions. They're life's journeys.
Yeah.
And at different points, we move on from certain people. At other points, we gain new recruits to our team. And there's others who have been there all the way.
Yeah.
It is what happens. And I've fortunately, he says, touching wood, my wife and I haven't been divorced, haven't gone through that journey, and it's just where the path changes, mistakes are made, etc., etc. The number of people at my age who I know that are separating nowadays because they've done the kids thing, and said, "All right, okay, well, I'm off then."
Goodbye.
She hasn't
find a 20-year-old
yet.
Yeah. So is there, especially considering that where your relationship is and where you've got friends whose relationships are breaking down, is there something that you think you're doing different to them?
When my wife and I first got together, early, I was 21, so I was not as young as some, but a hell of a lot younger than most. And I said something at that point, which has stuck with her, and it's something we've shared with our kids. And I said, after the first couple of dates, I said, I don't play games. Yeah, I'm not clever enough, manipulative enough, whatever you want to call it, to be a game player. Unfortunately, what you see is what you get. And therein lies the reality. So if I say it straight or whatever else, it's not that I'm being rude. It's just I'm saying it straight. Am I on a spectrum because I'm being blunt? Who knows? It's just that is how I work. And this was a conversation we had very early on in our relationship, and neither of us have been game players.
Yeah.
Even when you sort of get that sulky face that's stewing on something for several weeks, and sort of the elephant memory kicks in, and I'm not saying that was her, of course, but it's one of those realities of that's what happens. Well, yeah, I was like, no, we need to be clearer here. That doesn't smell right, doesn't feel right, and because of that, it's meant majority of the time we've been best mates, we've been good mates the whole way through. There's times when you fall out with your mate, though.
Yeah.
You went out drinking and didn't come home properly. You did. Doesn't often happen nowadays.
Yeah.
Did a lot more when back in the days of playing lots of rugby and all that nonsense that went together. But nowadays it writes me off for multiple days afterwards. I can't do it.
You've reached said that she actually wants you to go out.
Yeah, please go.
Yeah. Like, it's fine. I'm not doing that anymore. Yeah, so I guess it's just about that. I don't know. We always say communication is that key, but it's really about looking into that deeper, and it's about going, it's being able to being in that safe place to have that conversation, I guess.
Yeah. And knowing this, I wrote an article on this a while ago about uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
Just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean they can't be your friend. Which is where the political landscape is nowadays globally. Sort of, if you disagree with someone, then you have to beat them up. No, you're allowed to have a different opinion and still be friends.
Yes,
and with your life partner as well. We have different opinions. If you don't have different opinions, then you're just a clone.
Yeah.
And there's no stimulation, there's no interest, there's no fun in that. There have to be things about your other half that frustrate the hell out of you. Because then the things that you love may mean more and make you stronger.
Well, it's like you can't have a conversation, can you? Because if you both think exactly the same and you have the same ideas on whatever it is you're watching on telly or whatever else, then it's like you can't even talk to each other because you both know what you're thinking.
And there are times we've been together 30 plus years, because we were together for several years before we got married. And you turn around and you literally, no, don't say that, because I was thinking that as well. When you're watching the TV, and it is almost telepathic when you look across. No, that's just spooky and weird. Don't do that. Yeah. The kids will turn around and say, "Oh, you're doing that again." And then you both walk downstairs and you're wearing jeans and a red top, and thinking, "I put them on first." Yeah.
Yeah,
it's loving in certain ways, it's irritating in others, but that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. But that whole evolution thing is fascinating, and just and definitely about knowing that your partner's got your back. I think that's the big thing. And I also find, when there's something that's not right for you or whatever else, and when you actually talk to them about it, then actually you realize that either they had their wrong end of the stick, or actually they thought it was about them when it wasn't. And, so it really makes a big difference being able to actually have those difficult conversations, as you say.
I remember years ago, one of my daughters just turned around to me when we were having a discussion or something, and she said, "Stop trying to coach me." I just said, "I'm not. I'm just asking you a big question," which happens to be one I would use in a coaching environment. But I need to ask this question of you. So it's not coaching you. I'm just being a parent and asking. Yeah.
I was interested. I was watching the video on your website, and you mentioned about alcohol, and I'm just wondering, what has that been a problem for you? Is that something that's evolved, or?
I several years ago, my coach challenged me to give up booze, and so I thought, I'll give that a go. And what I learned from giving up booze, I gave it up for about 3 or 4 months, and the reality it gave up was, it taught me what I learned was that I'd been a habitual drinker since the age of 14. Yeah, which was literally going out, in relation to rugby and whatever else, going out boozing Friday night, Saturday night, maybe a couple of times during the week, and so on. And one of the things, a couple of things it drew out for me was on a Friday night. As many are that are watching and listening to this, I'd be drumming my fingers on the table. It's 5 o'clock and it's time for my first drink. Hey, I'm going to be European. I'll have one. And so on. It's sort of, because I deserve it.
Yeah.
I've worked hard, so I deserve it. And so you'd have a few on a Friday night. Then a Saturday, you'd be watching some sport or something. So you'd have a few in the afternoon. Then you go out in the evening. A Sunday, you'd have selfish wine, the stuff that you don't share with anybody else. And then in the evening, you'd finish it, or you'd open the second bottle, whichever. And then your Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, you would just have a one night where you'd have some alcohol. Conservatively, I worked that out as 15 hours a week I would donate to the god of alcohol. And that's excluding hangovers and general crappiness afterwards.
Yeah.
15 hours a week. 15 hours a week is 2 working days, which is 100 working days per year donated to the god of alcohol when we have no time. And that's a big reality. That's a scary reality, that we're willing to donate 100 days a year to the god of alcohol. And plus, on top of that, on a Friday night, I was begrudging having not been able to drink so that I could drive into the center of Coventry to pick up a daughter from a nightclub at 2 o'clock in the morning, or they could get in a taxi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A dodgy taxi.
Clearly, she's not getting in a taxi. Well, yeah. But I want my booze.
Yeah.
And you sort of realize that sort of reliance, but it was a habit rather than alcoholism in my case. Yeah. I know of family members and friends who are alcoholics or recovering alcoholics. But it's just, for all of us, it's knowing where we hemorrhage time, energy, and effort. 100 days a year. And if somebody listening to this is not a drinker, okay, now set up those apps on your phone that tell you how many hours a week you spend on Facebook, how many hours a week you spend on whatever else, how many hours a week you are on box sets, on all of that framework. The time we hemorrhage, 20 minutes improved productivity per day is 2 weeks gained productivity per year. That's a fortnight. That's 80 hours just improving your productivity by 20 minutes a day. And that's not working harder. That's working smarter.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to help your mental wealth.
Totally. So, and these are the things, these are the self-sabotage, but that when you're in a mastermind group and they know that that's the stuff you do, they call you out on it. Your coach sees what's going on there. Your professional networks see what's going on there. The people in your self-care support, they know what's going on because you're open and honest with them. You're trying to do a PB you of all people, trying to do a new PB in an Ironman. Yeah, but you decided to do it on one leg this time because it
just to make it harder.
Exactly. But things like that. Well, but if you're sabotaging yourself elsewhere, then these are the bits that hold us back. And when we've got the right people around, then we can make bigger decisions, braver decisions. And when the wheels do come off, as they still will, we're able to put them on more effectively because we can bounce back quicker.
So is any last things you want to say around that?
Loads, but we've been chatting for ages, so I won't. Two things I would say. One is when you have that support network around you, we can achieve more fun, as I was just saying. So do that subjective analysis again. Put some real time into it. Just make that list and understand who truly has your back and truly hasn't. There are people, there's one person in my life, and she has me as an 11 out of 10. She has that level of reliance on me. This is not my wife. But for me, she's a 7.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a symbiotic relationship here. And there are other people that you think are really cool and really sexy, and you'd like them to be an 8, 9, or a 10. But currently there are 2. Yeah. And unless you're willing to put in stupid amounts of effort to build them up, then you've got the wrong person there.
Yeah.
They're just a role model at arm's length, or somebody who's aspirational. It's a different game. And the other one here, and this I know will totally resonate with you, Colin. I want people to pick up the phone. This time last year, one of my son's friends, he was in his A-level year, fortunately was unsuccessful in a suicide attempt. At 10 o'clock the morning after this, one of my best mates in America rang. And I instead of the normal chirpy answering, I just said, "Bok, why are you ringing me now?" That's not very polite. And I said, no, genuinely, there's stuff going on here. Why are you ringing me at this time on this day right now?
Yeah.
And we spent a few minutes trying to dig into it. And all we could come up with, it was just intuitive, I should ring. I felt I hadn't spoken to you for a little while, I should ring. It was 5 a.m. in America when he was ringing. He's the head of A&E at a hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I was able to talk to him about everything this young man had done the night before. The situations, what was good, what wasn't good, everything that was going on there. And then I was able to translate that for my son, who was obviously very concerned about his mate, the twin sister of this young man, and the parents of him. And they were able to get more things, because this young man was in a coma at that time of the phone call.
Yeah.
Now, he had no idea what was going on in my world. So my call out to anybody and everybody listening and watching this is, pick up the phone. If there's somebody and your gut feel says, I haven't spoken to, I haven't been in contact with, just pick up the phone and ring them. Better still, if you live nearby, go and see them. Do not tweet them. Do not high-five them on social media. Do not just like something, whatever else. Put some effort in. You do not know what is going on in other people's worlds. It is our job as human beings to be responsible and supportive, because just doing that thing alone could change somebody's life and potentially could save one.
Yeah. And it's just those, because in reality, it's quite a small gesture, but it could just mean the absolute world to somebody.
It's asking better questions.
Yeah.
And if nobody's asking, then nobody's answering.
Yeah. That's really great. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us lots of things to think about. So that's really great. Thanks very much.
No worries. I'll see you in the wet soon, no doubt. And I'm still looking at that stripy bum over your left ear. It's just there.
I'll be all pink from my freshwater swim.
I'm not acclimatized. I'll have a wetsuit on at this time of year.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.